1995, while working with government-to-government export programs in the space sector, I was introduced to Neptec Design Group, a fledgling space technology company in Canada. From my first meetings with the company, I was struck by the dynamic, positive, and enthusiastic communication one could have with everybody in this group. I wondered if that was a result of the exciting time of negotiating a project with NASA, or there was another secret. Meeting the highly professional members of the company, I had the pleasure of also being introduced to Larissa Beach, one of the founders. I was thrilled that I could finally deal with a woman in this field. However, her schedule was such that I could hardly or ever get a hold of her, since her time was spent mostly in the air between Ottawa and Houston. And I gradually realized that she was leading and working from space or airports, but always returning calls and connecting, no matter how busy her schedule was, and always had a solution. Never became enraged by requests or different ideas. Her professionalism was such that her contributions as a woman were taken for granted. But it became quite obvious that the company would not have been as successful as it has been, and it is, if she wasn't there dealing and negotiating with such demanding NASA programs. Larissa led her negotiations from a different sphere, and her contributions helped not only the company, NASA, but humanity progress as well. So, Larissa.
This first slide, when you said that your profession does not define who you are, that kind of goes with me. This first slide kind of shows who I am. And this is non-professionally and from a non-work point of view. And possibly that quality made me as successful as I have been. And just to go very briefly over what you see there, the picture on the left is the top of the Grand Canyon. I am afraid of heights, and at that time I was about 50 pounds heavier than I am now. But we went the third of the way down and came back up because that's what I focused on and wanted to do. And same thing with the middle slide, climbing up Chichen Itza in Mexico. I had to have my nose at every step because I'm afraid of heights, so that I wouldn't look up or down, but I got to the top. And the other ones are part of the more the human side. When I was in Houston doing a meeting with NASA, an article came out after Katrina for relief and help. And the bottom one is our, I went with Hands On USA, and we did cleanup post-Katrina in Biloxi. And that was one of the bridges, the state of one of the bridges. And that was very rewarding work, doing something, nothing to do with work, that actually helped other people. The other two are just for my own personal pleasure. When I was in Africa, I finally took time off from the conference to go to a safari, and you could see the sun setting on one side and the plains on the other side. And someone asked, how do you prevent the animals from coming up here? And the guard that had this big, huge gun said, we don't. Anyways, I'm going to... It's kind of like, why am I here? I think Gabriella pretty well told you why I'm here. I'm a founder of a space business that has been very successful. I have worked in many different areas. I worked with NASA for over 15 years. Worked in the defense industry before that, so I have a very interesting perspective from a woman's point of view, and also generally from a business point of view. So I mean, encompassing about 40 years of effort. I think I was 10 when I started, right? I'm not going to tell you how old I am. Okay, so basically, I'm on the executive team and the board of directors. We actually came up with a strategy for commercializing our space products, and formed in a sort of another company, part of NEPTEC, and this company has been very successful in our efforts. The first 15 years that I spent were in defense type areas. I worked on the tactical navigation beacon many, many years ago with Lee Instruments that no longer exists. We did a deployable flight incident recorder. I actually didn't put it in there. I worked on a shipboard navigation system. And then at some point in time, we decided to form our own company, and I, along with 3 other people, sat down and we decided to form NEPTEC. That started with, I think it was about a $100,000 contract with NRC. And then NASA saw our technology and decided that they wanted it, and that's kind of when we started negotiations for that contract. That initial contract, by the time it was all said and done, I think it was worth about $80 million, so we progressed through the time. This is kind of epitomizes a picture of the culmination of our efforts. Of course, I ran the program, the shuttle program, for NEPTEC for pretty well the entire duration. The bottom was sort of the thing that made me the proudest of our company, and that is when I got invited to Baikonur, to the launch, Chris Hadfield's launch. Minus 55 degrees, though. I wasn't, and it didn't matter whether that's centigrade or Fahrenheit. That was pretty cold. And this picture is one of the launches that we were at, STS-131, where the space station was doing a flyby. You could see that little wee dot. And the launch was at night, sort of towards starting getting light. It was just amazing. The feeling was amazing. So it made me proud of being part of this program and proud of leading our team to that. So I think I pretty well talked about most of this. Our team won the George M. Low Award with NASA, which is one of the most coveted awards, and it was the first time, and as far as I know, still the only time, it has been given to a company outside of the U.S. And it was an award for performance according to schedule, budget, all the different performance issues and quality for NASA for a contractor. So that was a defining moment for our company. And I also, because I wasn't busy enough running the program and sitting in the air, I was VP of International Business Development, doing business internationally, and I can really feel for the fact that you have to have cultural sensitivity when you're dealing with other cultures, and you also have to do a little bit of research and know what every country is interested in before you actually go to the country. A large part towards the end of the business development efforts, we were putting our automated rendezvous and docking system on progress. We had everything all signed, sealed with the Russians, almost at the point of a contract, when the Russians invaded Ukraine, and we stopped talking to them, so that kind of fell by the wayside. So that's just me in my summer outfit in Baikonur, and sorry?
We couldn't see the other picture very much.
We'll have to go back to it afterwards. The other picture is a picture of the George M. Low Award. Okay, so just to bring this into focus, rather than just, I can talk to you afterwards about all the different stories. We've come a long way. When I first started as a woman in trying to get into a technical career, women just weren't accepted in technical roles. I was basically told that we just, I actually was hired, the first time I was hired at Lee Instruments, I was hired because I wanted to get into a technical role, and they immediately put me on administrative, gathering COBOL data and filing it. So I kind of decided that wasn't what I wanted to do and left. When they wanted me to come back, I told them that if I wasn't going to be in a technical project, I wasn't going to come back. So it was an interesting time at that time. I think we've come a long way from there, where there are women that are accepted in different roles in technology, in aerospace. It may in some, and companies are looking for that. They're looking for a balance between the men and the women. You know, like we are all different. You know, the book, Men are from Mars and Women from Venus. We are different and bring different things to the table. And I think it's important to have that kind of a balance and not to discourage the younger people getting into the business by saying, oh, well, you know, this isn't for you. Oh, see, I told you I'm not good at this. So, how do you overcome these challenges? You focus on what you really want to do, what you want to be. You accept and mitigate the risks. No matter what area you decide to go into, there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to hit people that don't feel that you belong there. You have to figure out how you're going to manage that, how you're going to get around it. I was talking to someone there and saying, I learned successfully the path of least resistance. If you stomp your hand on the table and say, I demand this, you know, because I'm a woman, you have no right to do this, you're going to get nowhere. So you learn the path of least resistance. You figure out what the roadblocks will be to getting where you want to be, and you figure out a way to handle it and to do that. And networking. Part of the success that I had is that I was very good at building strong networks of people, and that came with having tact and diplomacy. And you know, being in Texas, their views sometimes are not quite the same as ours. And you learn what topics to stay away from. You know, you don't discuss guns, you don't discuss religion, and you don't discuss the president. I mean, as long as you don't do any of those things, you're fine. So, but you build a strong network, and even in other countries, and that will help you forward. I mean, that's the same whether it's for a woman or for a man, but especially for women, they have to gather together a group of people that accept them for who they are and for what they do. So you focus on the positives. No use arguing about the negatives, because if you're talking to someone, it's kind of like, you know, don't confuse me with facts. I've already made up my mind. It's not going to work. You figure out what the requirements are for where you want to be, what you want to do, and you determine what those requirements are and find a path on the way through. A mentor, that's part of networking. If you can find a mentor, someone that kind of helps you. When I first started doing business development in Russia, I attended a conference in Limassol on humanity and on early warning on natural disasters. And one of the people there took me under his wing, and he helped me everywhere, introduced me to people, helped me and supported me. As a matter of fact, he just emailed me the other day. So that is important, especially as a woman trying to get into a field that there's not a whole lot of people there, is you have to find someone that's going to believe in you and that's going to support you and kind of help you through some of the more difficult times. And again, I already said, if someone's made up their mind, don't waste your time arguing with them. It's kind of useless. Just proceed and do what you're going to do and proceed forward. So I'm not just, and no one is just their work. although I sometimes when I was working 80 hours a week, I thought maybe I was. But you have to have something outside of work, and it's very important, for me, it's very important to do something that helps other people, that helps humanity. Like taking time out, it was over Christmas. I called my kids and I said, look, are you going to have a problem if I don't come home for Christmas? They said, are you going to come home at all? Yeah, I am. So I went to Biloxi and helped people. It was very rewarding to be able to do things like that. The conference that I attended, Space and Global Security of Humanity, and the project that they were trying to set up was early warning for natural disasters. That project, I worked with them for a while. Part of the problem was that they had a very technical focus, which was great. You have to build the instruments that can define when there's going to be an earthquake. However, if you don't get the governments involved, the political machinery involved, who are you going to call when you say there's going to be an earthquake? No one's going to believe you. So that aspect of it had to be addressed with that group. So the other organization that I joined, well, actually it was one of the original founders in Canada, was Women in Aerospace. I was in Paris at a conference, the International Astronautical Federation, and they invited me to a breakfast because I'm a woman, so I get breakfast free. And when I went there, it was kind of discouraging because it was almost a 3-to-1 men to women at that. And the speaker was a man. He was the head of DLR, very important. And I thought, oh, great, I wonder what he's going to say. But his speech was amazing, very, very all-encompassing towards encouraging women and girls to get into the forum for aerospace. So I was quite impressed. 2-3 of us at that time decided that we should form something in Canada. And this organization does exist. I'm a member of it still, but they're in Toronto, which makes it a little more difficult for me to actively participate. But their mandate is to encourage, mentor women in the aerospace field, which is a hard field to break into. So what is the woman's perspective? And I can tell you that having a woman on a team, either a management team or we had a team with various different strengths and weaknesses, some of the all engineers, and there was one other woman on this team. It really makes a difference because women bring a different perspective to the table. You bring a different, you sometimes think of the softer issues of what you're doing and how to manage things. And I think it really did make a big difference as far as what we came up with and how we worked together. Now, I'd love to say that our team got along perfectly every time, but we had a bunch of very, very bright male engineers as a general rule, and we did have our differences of opinion, but generally the team worked well enough together that we were able to produce superb products and deliver on time. So the management approach also, again, I'm just saying from the point of view of perspective, and it'll be interesting to hear some of the questions with regards to how that works. But one of the things I learned, again, goes along the path of least resistance. I know Gabriella, and I've been looking for this, I had a presentation that I did to our group called the Golden Rules, one of customer dealing with the customer, the other of dealing with each other. And it was, again, some of the softer issues of it didn't have anything to do with the focus of the camera or any of that. It had to do with how to deal with each other to maintain a positive approach, how to deal with the customer. And before I started our project or joined as a program manager, our customer, who was a tough Texan dude, had gone through 2 program managers and basically called and said, get him off my program. The way the reason I was successful is you learn, you don't argue, you figure out a way around. If he called me with something that was totally unreasonable, I would not let my ego get in the way. I do, yeah, okay, I'll think about it. And then you get back with have you thought about this and that? And there are ways of dealing with things without letting ego or anger or any of those get in the way. And I found that through, since I was 10, this really helped me through in my career. So from a point of view of a woman doing anything in aerospace or any career, you basically, what's the way forward? You keep in mind what you want to do. Keep your focus on that. Be sensitive. If what you want to do, it involves other cultures. Like I took a course at NASA on program management, international program management, because you have to be sensitive to how other cultures work. If you're going to be in aerospace and on a project that's ISS, multicultural, you have to know how things work, and you have to be sensitive to the issues other people may have with the way you deal with things. Mentor, someone to advise you, and then go for it. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that you'll end up doing what you thought you were going to do, because sometimes you change your mind, and that's fine too. So that's pretty well the sum total of what I wanted to say, unless somebody has questions.